This gospel story is one of the 7 miracles that we find in the beginning of John's gospel. The beginning of John's gospel is called the Book of Signs, and the signs in the miracles are designed to point out that Jesus is indeed God himself. There are going to be certain tip-offs throughout John's gospel. Certain themes will run through the gospel. The theme of light and darkness. And that is the theme we have today about blindness and Jesus giving sight to the blind man, because now light can come into his eyes and he can see. Also, when we have this theme of light for the Jewish people meant that the law of God is light. And the law then, the light, helps you to navigate yourself through this world without tripping up, without falling into sin. And so in the Old Testament, we have the words, your light, your law is a lamp unto my feet. A lamp unto my feet that prevents me from stumbling and from falling into sin. Now, we're building toward a crescendo. Crescendo is going to be next week with the rising of Lazarus from the dead. Because as you can see, the Jewish authorities are becoming more and more agitated about Jesus. He's becoming more and more popular, and it is a threat to their control over their society. That's what this is all about. It's very, very political. It's not just religious, but as I told you before, religion and politics, they go together. This story operates on 2 levels. The first level is the level of physical blindness. And this, of course, is the miracle that captures people's attention. Especially it captured the attention of the people during the public ministry of Jesus, a reason for him becoming more and more popular. But it catches our attention too. Imagine you go to an ophthalmologist and the ophthalmologist says, you're going blind, or you are blind, you have macular degeneration. And all of a sudden, he says, go to Father Orsi and he will... You get the point, don't you? Okay. But the real key here is not the physical cure, but it is the spiritual cure. It is the light that Jesus gives to the blind man to recognize him as being the Son of God. It's very, very well done here because it shows a development of faith in the blind man. When we read the full text of this gospel, it begins by saying, who did this to you? The Pharisees asked the blind man, who did this to you? And he says, that man, a man, Jesus of Nazareth. You go down further, who did this to you? Who was he? He was probably a prophet. So he goes from being a man to a prophet. At the end, we have the big, major breakthrough. Who did this to you? It was a man, was a prophet. At the end, what do we have? Do you believe in the Son of Man? Who is he, the blind man says, that I may worship him? And Jesus uses the words, I am he. I am. Old Testament, it's the term that God uses to reveal himself to Moses. And then the blind man kneels down and he worships him. The recognition that he is indeed God himself, because Jews only knelt to God. You see this wonderful, wonderful development here. Okay. Now, we have a blindness in our society today, a spiritual blindness. It militates against God himself because it defies God and his creation and the laws that he gives us as to how we are to live our lives according to his design. Let me give you some examples now of these violations of God's law and the blindness that is now inflicting itself upon our society. You have heard, I'm sure, some of you, maybe all of you, that the president's wife, Jill, the first lady, gave out an award last week. You know what the award was for? The Courageous Woman of the Year. Just so happens the courageous woman was a man. Now, do you think that's some kind of blindness? Oh, it certainly defies Genesis 1:27. What does that say? God created them male and female, but all of a sudden now we have a man, decides it's a woman, and the First Lady of the United States agrees. Yes, this is the woman of the year. You tell me, is that blindness? It might be physical blindness if you can't tell a man from a woman, but it certainly is a spiritual blindness. It's a denying of God's creation. Okay? Second kind of blindness that we are seeing in our society today, this is, again, something that is inconceivable. You hear in Florida that the governor is trying to get a law passed that will not allow children to have a sex change operation or to begin taking hormonal drugs or blockers before they are 18 years old. Now, that makes pretty much sense. You know kids as well as I do. Kids are all kinds of confused in their heads, all kinds of feelings and emotions and confusion sometimes. Well, the President of the United States says it's almost sinful to think that they will not allow a child to have a sex change operation or take hormones before 18 years old. Now, I ask you, is that not blindness? Do you know what the statistics are for transgendered people? It's about 0.3%. By the time people who are gender confused reach the majority, it's about 0.1%. And they are in need of psychological counseling. So now we have a president who thinks he's the Pope. He's telling us what's sinful. How dare you? That's sinful. That's what we call common sense. It's as obvious as the nose on your face. You cannot have a child making decisions to mutilate their body. It's a brutal, brutal operation. If you doubt me, go and look at pictures as to what happens to these children when their bodily parts are cut off and try to reform them. That is spiritual blindness. And I would say it's also a physical blindness if you can't see how dangerous something like this is. And yet, we have a president that's almost sinful. But it's not almost sinful to pour in tons of money for abortion, is it? Oh, there's a big difference, isn't there? Third, you've heard of the bank failures. California, New York, I'm told that there are about 200 more that are ready to fold. They're on the brink. What's the cause of it? The cause of it is greed. That's what the cause of it is. It's greed. It's investing money in a risky way. And who's investing the money? It's not little people like us. It's people with a lot of money who decided that they can take a risk to make more money. And they knew that the money was not going to be insured over $250,000. So they put more in, millions of dollars in. And then the government has the nerve to tell us, or the Treasury Department, it's a moral hazard. Yeah, it is a moral hazard to gamble. It is a moral hazard. Well, what does that mean then? It means that if you do it, it is immoral. Now, people talk about banks being corporations, and indeed they are. Anyone who's studied banking or law knows that a corporation is an artificial person. However, the corporation is made up of human beings who make the decisions. And the decisions that they made were reckless decisions. And so what does the government do? Instead of teaching them a lesson, not to be reckless, not to be immoral, we're going to rescue you. You're too big to fail. No, the message should be, you deserve to fail. And then they have the nerve to tell us, it's not going to be your money, don't worry about it. Don't fall for that lie. It is our money. It's the little people's money who are going to supply the money to bail out the big people who are greedy. And that is physical blindness. You can't read a ledger, and it is spiritual blindness. It is greed. And so this morning I'm going to ask you to pray for our country. America is quickly going blind. Quickly going blind. And if we do not open our eyes, ask the Lord to open our eyes, we are endangering not only our country, but our immortal souls. God love you.